Hello and welcome to Sensitive Changemakers, the podcast where we celebrate the power of sensitivity and introversion in leadership, entrepreneurship and beyond. I'm Kate Carter, your host, a certified professional coach, HSP and introvert who's passionate about helping you embrace your unique gifts and lead with authenticity. Let's dive in. Okay, let's get started. So this one is kind of inspired by what's been going on for me for the last few weeks and kind of just being really vulnerable in and honest about how I've been thinking about things and what's been going on in my head over the last few weeks, and just really kind of supporting you guys to navigate this yourself if this is something that you are going through. So I've entitled this What to Do When You're Just Not Feeling It. Reignite focus, energy and flow in your business. But the important bit there is what to do when you're just not feeling it. And I want to kind of talk that through as to what that looks like, why that might be going on, and possible things that you can explore. So the first thing I want to caveat this by saying is, it's always, in my opinion, and I know I am biased here, always a great thing to have somebody in your corner, somebody who knows you, somebody who gets you, somebody who understands your kind of triggers and the way that you react to things, so that they can support you through anything you're going through and help you to come out the other side, whether that isn't to have a business, whether that is to do something completely different, whether that is to tweak something, or whether that's to look at the kind of mindset, more energy side of things, and actually the business is fine, it's just maybe how you're feeling in that business. So that is to say that is, I think, really, really important. The things that I'm going to be discussing today are things that you can do on your own, so aren't coach specific necessarily. You don't have a coach, that's absolutely fine. For this particular masterclass, we're going to be talking about what you can do to support yourself and to navigate through. So I've, like I said, entitled this because of things that have been going on for me. And I do go, human being here, I do go through kind of highs and lows like everybody else. They're not as extreme as they used to be, and I'm very much most of the time kind of in that middle bit. But something will come along that knocks me, and my health over the last few years hasn't been as consistent and as balanced as I would like it to be. And when it does pop up, it does kind of throw me off a little bit. And the last few weeks have been quite frustrating personally for me, because I've worked so hard over the last 2 years to really support my body in feeling better and getting myself kind of to that more balanced place. And so having this last kind of really kind of upsetting time for lots of different reasons was not only upsetting on my body, and meant that I had to change lots of different things about what was going on. So I had to I couldn't eat for the first week, and then gradually increasing my food, going from kind of bland. And last week I tried to introduce carrot, which is such a good food. And I love carrot, I love raw carrot. My body didn't like that last week. I think it's because it was too fibrous and my body was still incredibly tender. And so it upset me that way, but it also upset me mentally, because I had worked so hard to feel so well, and then it kind of knocked me for six. And then on top of that, I've had some more news at the end of last week from the doctor, where they're going to refer me to a consultant. They're not quite sure whether there's inflammatory bowel disease there or even cancer. So I'm on one of the pathways. They're not quite sure which one yet, whether we're going to go down the cancer route or whether we're going to go down the inflammatory bowel route. So yeah, it's all a little bit upsetting over the last few weeks. And the reason that I'm sharing this is because as a result, my business has taken a back seat. Now, what I mean by when I say my business has taken a back seat is I am still supporting clients. That is always at the forefront of everything I do. I am still marketing, but not to the degree that I was, because I just don't or haven't had the energy, motivation to be visible like that. And so it really has meant that things on the marketing side, that is where it's really kind of reduced in terms of me being visible. And as a result of that, what I've noticed, and this is a pattern for me, so I'm kind of exposing myself here to hopefully give you an insight into not only how my mind works, but to give you some kind of normality and some permission to look at this for yourself. But I know that what happens to me is if something like this happens, so something knocks me off, something that I can't control, like being poorly, like I was, knocks me off completely. And then that has a knock-on effect to how I show up in business. The marketing side, more or less that side of things, it has affected how I support clients, but that not very much. Like I had to bless one of my clients, so she's probably here. I did have to finish one of my client sessions early because I could feel my stomach starting to spasm and go into pain, and so I had to wrap it up really quickly because I knew what was going to be happening as a result of that. But that generally has been the only thing I've had to change. I've managed to keep everything else the same in terms of supporting clients. So it's very much been the marketing side of things. And then what happens to me as a knock-on effect of this is I start to get demotivated in terms of wanting to show up because, and I'm going to break this down in a bit, because I think being highly sensitive and being human, our brain loves to look for problems and it loves to latch onto things, just as any human being brain does. That's just what it loves to do. But add in the highly sensitive side of things where we like to go down our thought rabbit holes, I like to call them, and we do go deep, deep, deep. What often happens is my brain latches onto something else that's happening in my life that maybe I can find a problem with, because I do love, as I said, we love finding problems. And then I go down a rabbit hole with that one, and that detracts further from my business and makes me want to show up even less, if that makes sense. So all of these different things are going on. I wanted to really break it down for you. Number one, I wanted to be completely honest and just kind of show up as me so that you can see what's going on. But also, like I said, to normalize it and to give you permission to do the same if it applies to you. It might not apply to you, but I wanted to put that out there just in case. Okay. So the first thing I really wanted to, I think, express is the fact that you're not broken and you're not lazy and you're definitely not alone. And this masterclass is very much for those moments when your motivation disappears, your ideas run dry and business just feels really heavy. Because that is very much, I think, where I've been over the last few weeks. And I have quite a successful business. It runs really well. I could always do better. Always. There are different things that I definitely want to do. There are definitely, ways to scale and grow. But, my business goes well. So this is for any kind of businesses, even if, you're right at the start or like I am nearly 6 years in. So the first part I think that's really important is looking at the why. And I think, are you doing so just some questions here just to kind of break this down. This bit doesn't apply to me, but it is a question I ask myself every so often because I want to make sure that I'm doing what I really love doing. One of the reasons I started a business was because I was so fed up of being on a conveyor belt of life. That's what I called it, a conveyor belt of life. And this is speaking from an education person, a teacher person, but I was fed up of kind of getting on the conveyor belt when you leave school and then just being expected to stay on the conveyor belt as you go through life and then you get off when you die. I just didn't want that at all. And I wanted to do lots and lots of different things. And I think I had a lovely podcast with Dr. Katie Larson, who I'll put it down below. And she was talking about how highly sensitives, you've got the more cautious highly sensitives, which is where you're sensitive to a lot of things. You get quite overwhelmed by different stimuli. And as a result, you're quite cautious to things because of that. But you also have this kind of seek highly sensitive, which is where highly sensitives, yes, there's that overwhelm again, but they actually seek that depth and they seek that exploration and they seek that that kind of sensory input or that sensory stimuli, because it's obviously there's dopamine hit there, but it kind of soothes something in them to have that as well. And I think sometimes, I don't know about you, again, it'd be a great kind of question to ask yourself, but I know sometimes I'm a bit of both. I can be incredibly cautious, but I also do love life. I love living, I love exploring things, I love finding awe in just the world around me. And so that was very much one of the things I wanted to start my business for, is because, yes, I wanted to support people. I was used to doing that. That's what I became a teacher for. But I also wanted to explore different ways of doing that and live just in lots of different ways and do things my way and see how that felt. So that is very much still here. That is part of why I'm here and why I live what I do. But if you're not feeling the same, some of the questions that you might want to ask yourself is, am I doing what I want to be doing? Or am I doing this because I think I should be doing it? And I think there's nuance to this anyway. And I know I'm just going to put it as a question out there, and there's so much ways that we can explore this question. But it's a great question to start asking yourself. And like I said, I do it all, every so often. Like, is this definitely I still want to be something I still want to be doing? Am I doing anything here because I feel I should be doing it? And this, for me, doesn't necessarily come around the business itself, but in terms of marketing, sometimes I do get caught into the shoulds. And I'm like, oh, actually, I'm doing this because I think I should, rather than because I actually think it's useful for my business. But this is a great question to ask. And obviously, like I said, there might be nuance to it. There might be extra details to go into it, but it's a great starting point. Is this what I want to be doing? Is there anything that feels like I'm just going through the motions? Is there anything here where I feel like I should be doing it rather than I want to be doing it? So great questions to ask yourself if you're feeling like, I'm just not feeling my business at the moment. The other question to ask yourself, and we'll go into this in more detail, is, do I need more rest? And there's, again, so much nuance to everything I'm saying here today. But one of the things that I know to be so true is we can only push ourselves so far. And most of us are brought up in a society where we are doers. We're brought up to do. That benefits so many different people apart from ourselves. And we can get caught up in that trap of, no, I've just got to show up and I've just got to keep doing. And sometimes we actually do need to plan in more rest. Now, I am a big believer that actually structure helps creativity and flow. I think having that little bit of structure, and I'll talk about this in a minute, actually supports us in understanding ourselves better and where we need to put our energy and where we don't need to put our energy. Otherwise, we can feel like we're having to do it all or nothing, and then it becomes, I think, a lot of, it can become a problem for a lot of different reasons, not only for ourselves but for our business, etc. So I'm a big believer of having a structure in place to support creativity and flow. But one of the ways that we can support that and support our creativity and flow is actually planning in rest. Now, I've got to be quite honest with this. I think sometimes I'm great at planning in rest, and I think sometimes I'm not. So this is very much a journey I'm on. This isn't something I've, completely solved and got right. But I know that when I plan in my rest and I go, right, do you know what I'm going to do? 2 weeks of really in-depth looking at how I can do less better, getting really strategic, going deep. Then I'll have 2 weeks where I don't have to show up as much, where I'm just going to serve my clients. Having that break really does support me. So do I need more rest is probably a good question to ask yourself, especially as a highly sensitive and introvert with the noise that's in the online space. It's a great question just to kind of ponder and just see what comes up for you. I think those two questions, so you get a better understanding of why to start off with, is a great place to start. And then when you know your why, there might be some really big things that you might need to change. There might be, do you know what, I'm doing this because I fell into this, or I'm doing this because somebody told me I'd be good at this. Those are quite really good questions to kind of just, or answers to kind of ponder over and think, okay, so am I doing something I want to be doing? If I could wave, and that's why I love that question, if I could wave a magic wand, what would I like my business to look like? What would I like to be doing in my business? Do I want a business? Those kind of questions. And then, taking action or getting support as you need to once you've got some of those answers. If you're still feeling like, yes, I still want a business, like me, I absolutely want a business, I still want to be doing this, but I still don't feel like I'm in it at the moment. Like, I don't know what I want from this, or I don't know how to kind of feel into my business again, Then we can go into some of the more deeper elements of how you can support yourself. So one of those is, like I said, I believe having a structure in place really does support creativity and flow. So, and the reason that I think this, I'm going to try and break this down for you. So the reason I think that having a structure in place supports creativity and flow is because it enables you, or it forces you to a certain degree to get clarity around certain things. Because to have a structure in place, you have to have clarity about why that structure is there, what it's serving, how it's supporting you. And that clarity piece can then enable you to have flow and creativity. So having those questions answered about what is it that I'm doing, what is my, what am I doing, what's my business, who am I offering it to, like, again, who's my ideal client, what's the journey or the transformation I'm helping people to have. Those three questions I think are super important. And again, there's loads of nuance with each of those questions. You can go into more detail with each of those questions, but I think as an overview, those three questions are great. They encourage you to think in more detail. They encourage you to get that clarity. And then once you've got that clarity, you can get a structure in place. And once you've got that structure in place, that actually does then support creativity and flow, because you know exactly what you're doing. You can sit in the zone, if you like, and look at your content. You can sit in the zone and you can look at where you want to be over the next 6 months. So I don't know, I'm just going to swindle it back around. You can see my calendar here. And what I do with that calendar is I have, so on a piece of paper, I have my monthly outlook, like what is my intention for each month. This isn't kind of results driven, it's process driven. So it will be like, right, my intention for January is to have a masterclass. Right, okay, so when am I going to have the masterclass? Am I going to have it at the end of the month, the start of the month, when? So I generally have it towards the end of the month. That gives me 2 to 3 weeks of promoting it. And then that enables me to have that clear plan of like this first 2 weeks, I'm going to promote that. I always have like a connection post in, what I like to call a connection post, something that is about me, that's a bit about behind the scenes, or how my brain works, how my thoughts are put together. That's in there as well. And then I write it on my calendar so that I've got an idea of like, these are things. Now that isn't set in stone. There is absolutely room to negotiate and room to kind of flex or be flexible with that. But it gives me a clear idea of what my intention is for each month. And I specifically make it process based, so that, and I do have results based ones as well, but I like to have the main one being the process based, because then I can have my wins the other side, if celebrate those wins, celebrate those process wins, if I'm actually putting those things into action, and then I can have a results one on top of this. So that gives you an idea, I think, about how I break it down, and yours doesn't have to look like that, but how you can get that really needed clarity, those three questions. What is my business about? Who am I serving? What's the journey or transformation? Those questions, especially for service-based providers. Product-based providers is slightly different, but I do think that those two questions are still really supportive. That then enables you, as I said, to have a structure in place, and then that structure can support that creativity and flow. And then you've got things in place that you're in control of, that you can change, that you can adapt if needs be. So that's my first thing. I think sometimes some of us feel like we're not feeling it, because we're relying on inspiration. We're relying on that hit of creativity. And then we think there's something wrong with us if that hit of creativity or that inspiration doesn't come. We're like, wow, I must be really rubbish at this, or I can't be very good at my job if I can't even think of something. And often it's not about that. It's because we're not clear, we don't have clarity, and we don't have a structure. And I know those things sound quite masculine, but I'm really talking about meeting masculine and feminine in the middle here. It's not all about having way too much structure, and it's not about having no structure at all. It's about having something in place to support you to flow, to create. And I think that's a wonderful meet in the middle between being masculine and feminine, that masculine feminine energy. So that's what I would really encourage you to look at, if that is one thing that you're really resonating with. You're like, yeah, actually that is why I'm not feeling it at the moment, because I'm waiting for inspiration, I'm waiting for creativity. If you're waiting for it, that then leads to frustration if it doesn't come. So having that structure in place can really help. Okay, so the next part is about actually planning in rest. And like I said, there's lots of different ways that you can do this. You can feel it out. If you've been doing it for a while, you'll start to learn, actually, yes, I do need maybe a week where things are quieter or 2 weeks where things are quieter. You might want to sync your cycle. If you have a cycle, you might want to sync it and see if that supports you, so that when you're in your kind of, I think it's your luteal phase, you might want to take more rest then, just to support you in really balancing your energies. But that, I think, is an important one there. Now, the next part actually goes against what I've just been saying, but I think it's not a case of or, it's a case of and. It might be this as well. So if you've got the clarity, so you know exactly what you're doing, you've got a structure in place, you know what's going on in your business, you know what processes you are focusing on or your intention is for each month or each quarter. You are planning in rest. You know that how your body works well, and you've planned that and you've taken that into consideration. The next one is what happens to me. So this is the one that's quite a personal one. What I often find, like I said, is when I take a break for whatever reason from marketing, specifically marketing, but it does go over to kind of supporting clients as well. If I have a break completely, like nothing going on, I often find it very difficult to get back into the swing of things because, like I said, my brain looks at other areas of my life, finds lots of little things that I can look into, and my thought patterns go down rabbit holes, and then my attention gets grabbed somewhere else. And then it can feel really difficult to get back into the swing of things. So one of the things that I have to make sure I do for me, that I've learned over the years, is not to go cold turkey on my business at any point, because it doesn't actually support me. So rest is important for me, absolutely, but it goes hand in hand with also having my eyes in my business, because I have to do both. It's not an and or, sorry, it's not a this or, it's a this and. So I plan in my rest and make sure that I'm still working in my business, because I know that if I go cold turkey, I find it very difficult to come back into it. And it's not because I don't love it, because I do. But this goes in other areas of my life as well. I'm bringing it to the discussion here just in case it affects other people. But I find it, if I go cold turkey for the gym, if I go cold turkey and don't eat well, you know, all of those different things, it's the same. I find it very difficult then to get back into the swing of things. And it isn't because I don't want to do those things. It's because I think it's almost like I've got to gear myself back up to it, because it means being more visible. It means there's a fear of judgment. It means all of the different things that I worked at the very start of my business. I think it's those things that can creep back in if I go cold turkey. So I hope that makes sense so far. So one of the things that I love to bring, and I do work on this with clients as well, is what's the bare minimum for today? So a lot of people put a lot of pressure on themselves to get so much done in their business. And what I like to do is actually flip that and think, right, okay, what's the bare minimum you've got to get done today? So for me, in the last few weeks, with being poorly and just not wanting to be visible because I haven't been well, what's the bare minimum that I can expect myself to do those? So mine has been these masterclasses, sending a weekly email, and promoting my podcast. Those have been my 3 ways. Those have been my bare minimum things that I've been obviously doing in terms of marketing, in terms of showing up and being visible, and obviously serving my clients as well. But that, like I said, that's one thing that I generally do very well. It's the marketing side of things where things drop when I'm not very well, because it's easier to, and it's the one place where you don't want to be as visible because you're not feeling very well. It was the case for me anyway. So rather than going cold turkey, it's what's the bare minimum that I need to do here to keep it ticking over, so that I don't have that all or nothing kind of, I'm all in it or I'm not in it at all. It's very much just what's that bare minimum. And I think this is a wonderful way, because then it can build, it sounds like almost like a lazy excuse, but I actually see it as a really positive thing, because I think so many of us are kind of those personality A types where we expect so much from ourselves. We put other people and things on pedestals. And actually this encourages us to say, success doesn't have to look like being up here all of the time. It doesn't have to look like being on 110%. It doesn't have to look like given it your all. It doesn't have to look like hustling and being switched on 110% of the time. It can look like doing just a few things every day. And so I love this bare minimum perspective to help us to keep going every single day. So just in case that applies to you, this has been my kind of sticking point that I've really had to understand about myself and then work through. Okay, the last thing I really wanted to talk about was, what if it's because you're feeling frustrated with the lack of results? So we've kind of talked about just check in with the why. Are you feeling like your whole business is something you want to be doing? Then we've looked at rest. Then we've looked at structure. And then we looked at that bare minimum perspective. But are you feeling just not into your business because you're feeling frustrated with the lack of results? And again, I'm going to say here, if this is the case, having a coach or a mentor or a consultant, any of those things, depending on what your needs are, I think is the first place to go to, because they are invaluable in supporting you, in being in your corner and seeing things that you can't possibly see. But we're again talking about things that you can do on your own. So first of all, celebrating those small wins. And like I said before, including process wins in here, not just results wins. So what I mean by this is, a result win is obviously signing a client, having some profit come in, those types of things, having lots of people turn up to your masterclass, having lots of people come onto your email list. Those are all kind of result wins. Process wins are, I am going to do X, Y, and Z this month. I am going to write 3 newsletters. I am going to do a masterclass. I am going to finish my course. I am going to post 3 times a week. Those are process wins. And with process wins, that you are completely in control of those. Where results wins, obviously there's a partial, absolutely. There's some input from you, but you can't force those things to happen. There is a little bit of somebody else having to do something as well to make those things happen. Whereas process wins are controlled solely by you. And so as a result, we need to celebrate them, because the more we celebrate those process wins, the more we're going to want to turn up for them and show up for them, and the more likely it is that we then get those result wins. So I always encourage all of my clients to have a wins book of some description, and to spend maybe, once a week or once every few weeks just celebrating those wins. I said I was going to do it, and I did. I did this and it made me feel good. I did this, what have I learned from it? Those types of things. And there can be journal prompts around it. Like I said, you can look about what you've learned from this. It doesn't have to be, yay, I did it. You can actually look at it in more detail, but it's a great starting point. The more you celebrate the wins, the more you're going to want to turn up, because it's wiring your brain to go, it was good when we showed up and we did that, so let's do that again. Okay, so it's a bit of that chemical kind of reaction in your brain as well. The next thing is, you can really take time to understand what's going on. So this kind of flips back a little bit to earlier, but you can do this in a journaling kind of way. And I like to do a fear inventory. So a fear inventory is where you write down what your biggest fear is in your business at the moment. So I'm scared that I'm not going to get any clients, for example. And then you keep going down. So what would that mean if I didn't get any clients? What would that mean about me? And you keep going down until you get to a kind of a route that won't go any further. And that then gives you a real clear insight into what's really going on. Now, you can do this in lots of different ways. You can focus on that route and think, okay, so now that I know that's the issue, the kind of root issue that's really bothering me, what can I do about that? You might need some support. You might need to look at things differently. You might need to shift your perspective. But another way that you can do it is just keep doing fear inventory. And I had one of my mentors who said, the more you do that, the more likely it is that you just get fed up of your own BS, as she said, which is true, because if you're writing the same thing over and over again, you're like, oh my God, I'm just getting frustrated with seeing this. So what can I do to support myself? So there's 2 ways that you can look at a fear inventory. You can look at it as like really supporting you in the root cause, or you can look at it as, if I keep using this as journaling prompt, I am going to get fed up that the same thing keeps coming up, and I am going to want to take action and change something so that doesn't keep happening. So there's 2 different ways you can see it, depending on what type of personality you are and how you want to approach that. So that's one way of doing it. I've got some other journal prompts here for you that might help you. So if you are feeling low in energy and you're just not like feeling it. What do I think this says about me? And then what would I do today if I fully trusted that rest is a part of the process? So the first one is very much supporting you in seeing what's going on underneath the surface, which I love. The second one, the second question, what would I do today if I fully trusted that rest is part of the process, is going back to that bare minimum perspective, isn't it? What's the bare minimum I could do today? What would be the thing that would help me but isn't too much on my kind of on my energy levels for today? So either of those questions, great ways to ponder and to think about what's going on underneath the surface, not service. And then the next question I've got here that moves away a little bit from journaling into more strategy is reverse engineering. So if you're feeling just not into your business because you're feeling frustrated with the lack of results, have a look at what has worked well in your business already. I cannot stress this one enough. I think this is really, really important. Not enough people do it. We get pulled into thinking we need to do something different. We get that shiny object syndrome where we just think, oh, I just got to go and do this, or this person's going to solve it for me, or this course is going to solve it for me, or I'll just do another freebie, I'll just put something else out there. And most of the time, we've already got the information that we need in what we've already tried before. So if we just kind of, and again, spend time, if you need to feel something, if you feel a lot of emotion, you know that I'm a big lover of this anyway, feel the emotion, whether that's you go and dance, cry, scream into a pillow, write a really angry letter and then burn it, or rip it up, whatever you want to do. If you need to feel those emotions, feel it. And then when you're in a much more neutral perspective, when you're feeling a little bit more balanced, when you're feeling a little bit more like, okay, I can look at this differently now, that is the time to look at it and think, right, what have I done in my business that has already worked? If I've already got a client or if I've sold a product, what happened for me to get there? Where did I put my energy? What did they, or how did they say yes to working with me like? And then reverse engineer it. Have a look at what you did, reverse engineer it, and then look at how you can go into more detail on each of those points. And it might be that when you look at it, you think, oh, okay, I don't know, I sent emails, or I reached out personally on an email. Right, okay, well, how can I go in deeper there? How can I send more personal emails out to people? How can I invite them to work with me that way? So reverse engineering something is really, really useful, especially if you're feeling like, oh, just not feeling it at the moment and it's due to frustration of lack of results. So having a look at things that have already worked in your business and reverse engineering it. I hope that's supportive, because that would be so much more useful for you and so less time consuming and so much more calming on your energy than thinking that you need to go and do another course, or thinking that you need that person to go and solve it for you, or thinking that you need to offer another freebie or anything like that. Reverse engineering what has already worked well is so much more time smart for you and energy smart. The other thing that I wanted to touch upon here is visibility. So sometimes when we're not just feeling it, it's because we're sensitive and subconsciously we're resisting that success. We're resisting being visible or showing up because we're scared, because we're worried that it might be, we might be saying the wrong thing, we might upset somebody, somebody might tell us we're wrong, somebody might say that we're talking a load of nonsense. But there's that fear of being seen, that fear of success, that fear of failure, whichever one kind of applies to you. Sometimes that can hit, and I think that's what happens to me. Like I said, when I go cold turkey on my marketing side of things, coming back into it, I find tough, and I do find a lot of resistance around it. And I think one of the reasons I do that is because I've got to, like I said, get myself back up into that, being visible. And again, almost going back over old fears and old doubts that came up at the start of my business. And I think it was somebody said, new level, new devil. And I think it was Kim Arkitsinger, I give her credit, because I think she said, no, new level, same devil. And I think this is absolutely the case here. It's like you're You're doing something new, in this case, coming back to being visible, marketing, etc. But it's the same devil. It's the same things that came up way back when you first started. And I think that's the case for me, if I'm completely honest. That's why I have this bare minimum perspective, so that I keep myself going. So I put one foot in front of the other. Okay. The last couple of things, or the last thing that I really want to touch on here, is nervous system. And I think this is so true for a lot of us. I don't think we talk about this a lot of business, but I know it's especially true for highly sensitives and introverts. A lot of the times when we're unmotivated and we don't feel like we're in it, if nothing else resonates with you that we've been through today, it might actually be a case that we're just dysregulated, that our nervous system is just overwhelmed. And we're like, phew. And instead of your brain being the one to go, oh, I'm okay, or I might need to take a break, or I might need to plan some rest in here, your body takes over and goes, nope, you're done. You're done. You've been pushing too much. You've been hustling too much. You're now just going to switch off because I'm going to make you. And so it's this dysregulation of our nervous system. And if you don't know anything about your nervous system, how it works, you've got the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is your kind of rest and digest. That's what looks after your breathing, your heart beating, your body just moving as it does from being human and just moving around. All of those different things. Your sympathetic nervous system is responsible for your fight, flight and freeze. And what can often happen is we don't realise that actually we're spending more time in our sympathetic nervous system than our parasympathetic nervous system. So things that actually trigger our parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest, are things like deep breathing, meditation, going for a walk in nature, resting, all of these different things. And it might be that we haven't been doing a huge amount of that over the time, and so it's accumulated and it's got to a stage where our nervous system has completely dysregulated because we're living in that sympathetic nervous system, which is just, it's almost like at the extreme you're living in survival, but sometimes we can just edge over into the sympathetic nervous system. We're not even aware that we're draining ourselves or that we're hustling and pushing and pushing and pushing. We just think we've normalized it. And this is the beauty of our bodies, because our bodies do normalize things over periods of time. You know, if I think about my back, I do have, ever since I've had kids, I have like a lower back pain. I think it's to do, I've got hypermobility in my hips. I think that's kind of connected. But if I stand up for long periods of time, if I walk for long periods of time, my back aches. I've normalized that over time, whereas sometimes I don't even notice it, and unless it's particularly bad, and I'm like, ow, that hurts today. But I've normalized that. And it's both a good thing and a bad thing, in the fact that your bodies and brains are amazing, that they adapt, but also they adapt. And so you forget that that was a problem in the first place. And I think sometimes that happens with our nervous system. We adapt to being able to survive in this sympathetic nervous system, and we forget that actually we need to have some parasympathetic nervous system activity as well. We need to rest and digest. We need to go for a walk in nature. We need to do some meditation. We need to do some deep breathing. And we forget that sometimes. And so when we're not feeling in it, it's our body going, you're done. You're done. You weren't listening. And now I'm making you listen. And I'm making you not want to do this anymore because you need to take a break or you need to do something different. So I think that's just an important part to add into that. Sometimes that is the case as well. I really hope this has been supportive and been quite kind of an eye-opener, not into what's been going on in my life, but also an eye-opener to kind of help you to navigate and explore some issues and some concerns, or maybe just some food for thought that might be popping up for you in your business. I think I'm going to end this by just saying, very few people, when we go through this work, have to overhaul their whole business. You might find that you but you might find that what actually your body and your brain and your whole being is needing is coming back to yourself, to honor whatever season you're in and trust that the spark can return, that it can be gentle, it can be slow, and it can be in our own way, and that it doesn't mean that you're not meant to be here. Because I think sometimes that happens for a lot of highly sensitives, is when this comes up, when we just don't feel it, we assume that that means that we're not set up for it, that we can't do it. And I think if you spoke to any business owner, any human being who is in business, they would tell you that this does come up for them in one way or another. And like, I've given you loads of ideas of how it could come up for lots of different people. And I've explained how it comes up for me. It might be very different for you. But I think everybody experiences this at some point. It's, again, how they navigate. It's that resilience. It's how they process it, and then how they show up again after, and what they make that mean. So I hope this has been really useful and supportive for you, and sending you so much love. Have a lovely, lovely week. I'll see you soon. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. If you have any takeaways or any questions, please do reach out to me either through Instagram, LinkedIn or Facebook at Kate Carter Coaching, or you can email me at kate@katecarter.co.uk. I always love to hear your feedback and the things that you have taken from the podcast. If you know of any other highly sensitive people, then please do share this so that I can reach more and support more highly sensitive people to embrace their strengths and gifts. As a thank you, I will pick a winner every month for a free 50-minute coaching session with me. Thank you so, so much.